All right, if you haven't already listened to Heidi or Jason's interview, make sure you get a chance to go listen to those conversations as well. Next up is going to be a friend of mine by the name of Cindy. And Cindy is adding to this conversation because not only is Cindy an immigrant, but she's a first-generation Christian Taiwanese American. What a perspective that we get a chance to listen into. Let's take a listen to this conversation between me and Cindy. I hope you're blessed by it. Cindy.
Yes.
Avenell.
Maurice.
Yes, I am here. I'm joined by you. Thank you so much for being a part of our third and last episode.
Oh, wow.
I know.
I'm
we
honored.
saved the best for last.
Oh,
so just
yeah,
let you
right.
know
We'll
the
see.
pressure's on.
We'll see.
Our third and last episode.
Let me look at my notes.
There you go. There you go. Exactly.
Okay.
Of this sort of mini project that we've been putting together to celebrate and honor AAPI month. And we've been having conversations long before this around just some of this topic. And so you were one of the ones that I feel like, man, this would be perfect to reach out and to hear some of your story. And that's what today's all about, is hearing your story.
Wow.
So once again, I told you off camera, but I'm going to tell you again, don't feel like, you are speaking for all people within your community.
Yes.
Don't carry that burden,
Yeah,
I think
okay.
it's awesome for us to be able to do the hard work that Jesus calls us into, to learn each other and learn
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah.
Because no group of people is a monolith. So
Yeah,
to
for
hear
sure.
your story and
Okay.
your upbringing and your background, we're excited about. So first, to kick us off, just who is Cindy, hobbies, and your favorite movie?
Okay. Well, I love movies, but it'll be
Okay.
hard to pick a favorite
I know.
one.
That's
Oh
always
my
a tough
gosh.
question. That's always a tough one.
Yeah. Well, I'm an immigrant. That's
Okay.
what the first thing I can say.
Yeah.
But I came from Taiwan to this country when I was really young. And so I grew up in California.
Okay.
That's sort of my home place. And I did the normal stuff, went to college, and
UC Santa Barbara.
UC
Shout
Santa
out
Barbara.
to
Woo!
UC.
Go Gauchos, right. It's funny because my high school was also Gauchos.
Gauchos,
Yeah,
wow.
and I knew,
wow.
what is a Gaucho? Why are we Gauchos?
Interesting, yeah.
But there is a tie. I don't have to go into it.
Okay.
But and I always remember going to church as a family. We started in a congregational church, of all things.
Okay.
Which spoke Japanese because my parents knew
Wow.
Japanese.
Okay.
And so my brother, sister, and I just hung out with the kids. And,
Yeah.
and then we went to, there was a Taiwanese church starting up.
Okay.
And I say Taiwanese because they don't speak Mandarin Chinese. We spoke our dialect, And so it was really
yes.
comfortable for my parents, and I didn't really understand the service.
Okay.
But so we as a family went, and it was every Sunday. It was typical thing. It was United Methodist Church. Just
Okay.
As a denomination,
Uh-huh.
which I wasn't real into denominations, but that was our denomination. And we went. We didn't really have a church, and it was just a congregation, a bunch of people. But
Okay.
it became the community.
Yeah.
For me, my parents, and just
Of course.
as we built, so I had this side, and then I had school friends.
Yeah.
It's just really separate.
Okay.
That's just the way it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then hobbies and movies.
Hobbies.
Tell me what
I
you-
love music.
Okay.
I play piano, and I like to sing.
Oh.
I'm trying to get back into violin, but it's really tough.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah,
What would
really
you say your genre? Like if you were to jump in the car and put something on right now. Like,
To listen to?
Yeah, to listen to.
I really do like jazz, but I grew up on rhythm and blues,
Yeah,
R&B,
yeah.
soul music. But
Soul
that was
music.
the high school years. And
Okay.
then, so pop music. Yeah, I'm not. My husband and I have very different tastes. He said,
Okay.
I would never have met you in high school because we're just so different.
Different.
But
yeah.
and I some favorite bands. Okay, this is gonna date me, but I liked Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah,
And the Commodores.
come
I mean,
on.
yeah.
You said the Commodores too?
Commodores.
Ooh.
I mean, yeah.
Come
this is what I
on.
grew
Yeah,
up on,
okay,
And
okay.
so
Now I got a feel.
But then I'd
Okay.
have the pop music like the Carpenters and
Okay.
things like that. But I do tune
is
in on
awesome.
jazz
Yeah.
and the oldies now, which are what I grew up on. That's what I listen on the radio.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So as we dive dive into some of this conversation
Yeah.
and celebrating and honoring AAPI month. Tell me, why does celebrating AAPI month matter to you?
Wow. Well, like, I think it just gives an in, it gives an opportunity for us to recognize, us meaning everyone in this country,
Yeah.
to recognize that, hey, Asian Americans of many areas in the world, have contributed, have done amazing things, and just a common theme
Yeah.
is to be seen.
Yes. Yes.
And so it's like
Yes.
we get to celebrate the culture, the
Yeah.
accomplishments, and not stereotypes,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, I think,
I love
and
that.
like even like revisit like who are Asian Americans, because that's changed over the years.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
constitutes Asian Americans. Yeah.
I love that answer. And one of the words that you use that we've been using as a ministry in the congregation is the word opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to lean into. From your experience and your just, your experience, have you noticed that within the conversation of, things like this, is this a topic that you have to keep putting in front? Is this like, do you have to be intentional around education, like even for like your kids and things like that? Is this a conversation that you have to keep in front of them, or do you think that it's always been there? Do you have to keep it in front of yourself, or is it naturally there also? Does that make sense as far as the
For myself,
yeah.
I think it's always there. I have to say the whole identity thing
Yeah.
is back to my roots, and the language, the food, the culture, honoring aspect of elders and stuff.
Yeah.
That's always in my mind, as a comparison, even though I'm very Americanized.
Okay.
It's also there, but for my daughter, no, I don't really think it needs to be put out there, but AAPI gives me a chance to say, hey, you are also part of this.
Yeah,
Like, what are you
yeah.
learning in school? What are you,
Uh-huh.
what do you think? And it just gives, again, that opportunity and
Opportunity,
opening
yes.
to like, so, this is the focus this month. What do you think about? Where do you fit in?
Yeah.
And
Strike up conversation.
yeah, and it's touchy because she's not one to just open up. So
I understand,
I
yeah.
gotta be gentle.
Uh-huh.
But I'm so aware because of such a different. I didn't grow up in Colorado,
Right.
so the diversity, just the upbringing was like, I had an Asian community, and there was an Asian student union. So in my school, things like that, and it's like here
Wow.
I feel like, oh man, where are they?
Yes.
Or
yes.
where can I connect?
That's true. That's
So
real. Okay,
it's-
so we didn't talk about this, but and sorry to interrupt, but I'm jumping in there because I love even the things that you're bringing up. Was that something that you found important for you, like having an Asian community? That you had that, like you had growing up back home in LA or back in California?
Yeah, Northern Cal.
Yeah,
right?
Northern California. What role did that play, having that and having what did you say the group or the club was?
Asian Student Union.
Yeah, ASU.
Yeah.
We had BSU, Black
Yeah,
Student Union.
we had one of those too,
Yeah. And I was a part of the BSU.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So tell me, just for, your experience in that, what role did that play in your life, and how important was that to you, having that?
In hindsight,
Yeah.
I think that it was it felt like belonging, and it felt like a club. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a club.
Yeah.
But it also, I don't know. I could develop friendships that didn't have to do with schoolwork. Right? And
Yes.
yeah, I think it was just a comfort level of like, and we didn't talk about our various cultures because there
Right,
were
yeah.
Japanese,
Yep.
Chinese. We didn't get into that. We were just happy to look like each other a little bit,
I hear what you're saying.
you know?
Yes. Some
And
similarities,
yeah,
some shared
yeah,
story.
yeah, and it was a big part of my high school years
Wow.
because my best friends, there were just a lot of Asians in my life. I'm sorry to say I didn't have a lot of black friends. I mean, I knew people, and
I hear that, yeah.
but they were around too.
Yeah.
I
We're on
mean,
that journey together.
Yeah, so, but I would say that I want that for my daughter, but it's not going to happen here. And so I'm trying to be creative on how to keep that alive.
Yeah. You really do have to be creative, and I think that is something that I've even learned, moving here from Los Angeles, and even something that I think, when you're in the dominant culture, and my white brothers and sisters, it's not something that you have to seek out because you're in the dominant culture, right? And so being a minority, being when you're the only or you're very few, seeking groups, and I think anybody, like human nature, is looking for similarities, looking for shared, looking for a place that shares understanding, shares story, and that place of belonging, right?
Yeah.
And so while there's a beauty in the mixture and diversity, I think it really is a thing that you have to be intentional about and creative around. Aisha and I, my wife, we just had a baby, so it's like, thinking through that.
Yeah.
But it is important. It is important, and so in that same vein, right? So I emailed you about this, and then you emailed me back. So you got to break this down for me because you emailed me back, and you said, I think my story could be about the immigrant experience as a first-generation Christian, Taiwanese, and American heritage perspective.
Yes.
All right, so that's a mouthful right there.
That sounds so complicated when you say that.
It's all good, but what I loved is that you really stand at this intersection of so many different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And that is all of your story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, walk me through some of that. I mean,
well, the immigrant, I
yes,
just mentioned that, and I would say it's really interesting. I think, God put it on my heart too, in terms of a career. I have taught English as a second language to immigrants for many, many years.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So, because I sympathize with their struggles, and I don't. But immigrants too has a broad range. When did you come? And do you have family here or no family here?
There's layers.
They are
so
lots
good.
of layers.
Yeah.
So that's why I put that kind of first.
Yep.
And I say first generation because I was born there, but I grew up here. So it's this weird. They talk about 1.5 generations in a lot of immigrant families. I don't even know if I'm 1.5. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just depends, And the Taiwanese and Christian. Yeah. As I said, we grew up in the Taiwanese church, and so this was the immigrant ethnic church, and the whole service was in Taiwanese, and it eventually mixed with English as us young people grew up. But I felt like we were always developing the wheel, even when I was young in church. We were the oldest, so we led Sunday school. We were, things like that. And my sister and I played piano for service. Because we could, and they needed people. So it's
bring
small.
us close to some of that Taiwanese church experience. What would be one of would you say a staple or you're in a Taiwanese church when this happens, or this, you have this sort of thing, or, we had, the black church, there's like a B3 organ, there was a thing that you had and you're playing that. So I wonder for you, bring us close to just even some of that
From my experience, because in Taiwan, it's typically Presbyterian. That was the roots of things.
Okay.
But very formal there was an order, there was lots of reports, but we always had a meal at the end after service. This was a staple.
Yes.
And there were certain songs that we would sing, I'd hear in Taiwanese. So I learned them in Taiwanese. I mean, I'm more familiar. Then I learned the English and could really sing with it. But, I think Yeah, just a real orderly.
Yes.
Orderly, yes.
Right.
Yes.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Now, we talked a little bit around some of your upbringing in that. What would you say, even in learning, more things around your own background and, one of the things for me is a big thing for Black History Month is learning about new people, learning about different contributions, learning about different heroes. What for you has been something that you've learned as it relates to people who like you've admired that you've really
Yeah.
start to gravitate to as a hero or contributions that those within the AAPI community have made?
That is such a good question. And I thought about this, like growing up, I would say there were very, very few heroes. Very few heroes. We're just not, and it kind of goes with movies, which I
Yeah.
love, but they're
Would you
so
say because of
stereotypical.
representation?
Yeah,
I gotcha.
representation in
Okay,
the movies
okay.
were just like, they weren't there. So the biggest thing was Bruce Lee.
Wow.
That was the biggest thing, and then
Wow.
a lesser known actress named Nancy Kwan,
Okay.
and that was it. Oh, there was one TV show that had a Japanese housemaid. We watched that. I mean,
yeah.
but it's like there was nobody really to look up to.
Wow.
So
Wow.
so yeah, I mean representation. There was
Mhm.
that. In the academic side, if you will, you've probably heard of the model minority myth,
Yes.
which by the time I was in college, I became really aware of that. And there's a lot of pressure, and that's why I put what I put
Yes.
because I am Taiwanese by birth, but I'm American too, and
Yes.
so like choosing the date who you marry is huge.
Wow.
It's touchy, and then like
Wow.
keeping your reputation of the family. That's why I said about the honoring,
yes.
it's like it does
Honor
reflect.
culture.
Oh my gosh, big time.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you represent your family. You don't, you gotta be careful and
Wow.
occupations, what have you. But those are like two sides of
Yep.
of very different coins.
Yeah.
In terms of heroes, I will say, this side. I mean, as an older person now, I do think Bruce Lee as a person, he was a major hero. I've heard of another lady in movies, early, like Anna May Wong, and she's just getting her postage stamp.
Wow.
I'm so excited.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to honor her.
Okay.
And then, but I don't know. More recently, I mean, I was super excited talking about movies. We didn't get to that, but the recent win of Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
I was just ecstatic.
Yes.
Just and I saw Crazy Rich Asians, and I loved the Joy Luck Club, and I feel like those were all Asian casts. That.
Yes.
So the representation has improved.
Making strides. Yeah.
Making strides. And.
Wow.
But yeah, heroes that's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a really tough one for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Within the AAPI community.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That even alone is some education for just myself and just learning about that. And I'm sure others would even like, oh, wow, what about this? And I know that that's a big one. I mean, we don't even have time, but the difference within honor and shame culture versus American culture and how that is lived out. So I do really appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was looking into our questions, and one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about also was how can we who are not in the AAPI community be better neighbors? How can we I don't know, Cindy, for me, I guess the wrestle for me is I don't ever want to settle into a place that like I've arrived or that be okay with the status quo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a place within this conversation of being better.
Yeah.
And so how do we be better neighbors for those who are not in the AAPI community?
I think it's similar to if I see a African American person, I would hope you don't want to make all those assumptions that we unconsciously make.
That's good.
The biggest one, and you probably heard this before, but people ask me immediately, where am I from? And it's like, I could say California,
Right.
but they're expecting where I'm
Yeah.
from because I look non-white, let me put it that way. And,
Yes.
and so it's automatically like, you're not from this country.
Wow.
Yeah, the perpetual foreigner you've heard, in our
Yes.
conversations, and
Look
it
that
is
up,
true.
yeah.
But that question, my immediate answer has always been, "Oh, I was born in Taiwan," but it's not a fair question in a way because and there's lots of stories about like, "Oh, your English is so good," like I grew up
Sort of
here.
small
Yeah.
microaggressions.
Yeah,
sort
just
of, yeah.
a little. Yeah, just a little assuming that
Uh-huh.
because I have black hair and I have certain facial features that
Yeah.
I must be from Asia or some country that's not here, and so I would say getting to know the person, and I love there was one lady at my church now, that asked in a nicer way, like, tell me about where you've been, like, where did you grow up, and
Yes.
instead of assuming that I'm from another country, it was a different kind of feel, like,
Yeah.
tell me about your child, your young life.
I want to get to know your story.
Yeah, like as a person.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so important that you bring that up because it's subtle and it's something that even if a person doesn't consciously know, what they're doing or the impact of their words, sometimes I have fallen into that, excuse me, asking that question. And
Sure.
there's just something that is underneath that it feels like there's a feel there of like,
Yeah.
what are you honestly trying to ask? What is it
Right.
really
Right. You
that
really
you're
want to
wanting
know
to
where
ask?
my
Right,
family's
exactly.
from, not
Yeah. What is it that you're trying to get at?
Yeah.
And it's a way in which you approach people. Like you said, how can we all, even some of what I'm taking away from what you're talking about is in being better neighbors, we don't make assumptions.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we don't.
And I gotta watch that myself.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
For me, I'm learning,
for sure.
right? I have to watch that. We don't make assumptions that we don't, and also in being better neighbors, we don't live into stereotypes, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I
You
think
gotta
that
really-
is really important.
And
what you,
in delving into reconciliation things,
Yes.
In the recent years, I really am convinced. I have to learn, not only put away the stereotypes, but to see, as a Christian, the Imago Dei, like this is a person, this is a child of God.
Yes.
Whether I like them or I make friends with them,
That's
doesn't
real.
matter.
That's real. Yes.
You got to approach it.
Yes.
This is a child of God.
That's real.
Let's see what happens. Let's-
Well, that's where my landing question for
Yeah.
us. Through all of this conversation, Cindy, and somebody may be watching, somebody may be listening, it's like, oh, that's a cool story. Thanks for sharing that. What does this have to do with the gospel?
Yeah.
What is this conversation? What does leaning into reconciliation and across cultural boundaries and cultural stereotypes and all these things, what does, ethnic backgrounds and ethnic makeup and talking about this and the immigrant and why are we discussing this? What does it have to do with the gospel of Jesus Christ? How would you add to that? What input would you put into there or add, or bring to that question?
Yeah. It's a complicated question.
Yeah.
Let me just see.
Yes,
'Cause
please look at. Yes, I've asked you.
I watched
looked this
something
up.
recently. It was powerful. They were Asian American Christians, leaders, and I think in answer to that question, the gospel offers hope. The gospel encourages us to be humble and have humility. So this is the posture. And I do this too, but you meet someone, the person's from Sri Lanka. It's like, oh, I have a friend. You just immediately connect to like what I know rather than finding out. Curiosity.
Yes.
Like what's it like?
Yes.
Like tell me about how is it. I do know one lady here from Sri Lanka, and I know almost nothing about Sri Lanka, but I want to know what her experience is.
Right.
So that's what I mean by that posture of learning, posture of humility, and the gospel piece is that if they're struggling, I'm thinking mainly of immigrants,
Okay.
of any nation,
speak to
really,
it.
but
Yeah.
they're once a relationship or friendship comes, you can bring hope to who Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jesus knows your pain. Jesus knows your struggles.
Yes.
Jesus is with you, even though you feel alone
Yeah.
or you don't have a community yet.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Jesus is your friend,
Mm-hmm.
whether you have anybody else in your home culture.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I think that on top of your words about the doctrine of Imago Dei is so important. And
Yeah.
it's so key.
Yeah.
That we get a
Yeah.
chance to know one another.
Yeah.
And the more that we get proximate to each other's story,
For sure.
we are getting closer and closer to who God is, how
Right.
big He is.
Right.
And I think that is such an important message
Yeah.
for us to recognize, to lean into, that when it comes to reconciliation, it's not only reconciled to God, it's reconciled to
Yes.
one another.
Right.
It's reconciled to this earth.
Right.
Right. And so doing that work of bringing that together. And if race is one of the things that becomes a barrier or becomes something that is brought up as a barrier, culture, whatever brings it up as a barrier, we have to do the hard work of reconciling, because Jesus has tear down all barriers, right?
Yes.
So there's so much to that message
Yeah.
of Imago Dei and reconciliation.
And there's freedom.
And
too.
there is freedom. There is freedom.
I mean,
and we
yeah.
find that in Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
Yeah.
And if heaven is going to look like all peoples of all nations and all tongues, then I think
for
we got to
sure.
be able to fight for some of that
Yeah.
glimpse of heaven down here on earth,
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would add
to it,
just
yes.
one last thing.
One last thing. Go ahead.
With immigrants, we're constantly assimilating, and that has been the norm, and I get
Yes.
it. But Jesus never wanted people to be the same as each other. Jesus came and He accepted
Yes.
everyone. So it's like,
Yes.
no, we don't have to assimilate. So how can we
Right.
keep who we are?
who we
All
are.
of who we are.
And still be with one another.
Yes.
It's I've heard it said, the unity versus uniformity.
Yeah, exactly.
And that
exactly.
there's a
I
way to
think
be
you're right.
unified, but I don't have to become like you.
Right. And our goal is not, I feel, in churches,
Mm-hmm.
it's not to have like a lot of ethnic races, although that would be awesome.
Right. I hear you. That is I hear you.
But we don't
Amen.
need to be all alike either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we just assume we're going to agree on this doctrine or this
Uh-huh.
idea. It's
Yeah.
just, it doesn't happen.
It's so true. It's so true.
Because God made us different.
Yes. And even those within the white background, right?
For sure.
Our white brothers and
Yeah.
sisters.
Yeah.
We know, and it's like a duh, Maurice, that they're not all the same. There's no group that is a
No.
monolith.
Yeah.
And so I think we all have to be able to be ourselves and get to know individuals
Yeah.
and get closer to groups.
Yeah.
Cindy, this has been awesome. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for joining us.
Yes.
And being our last episode
Wow.
for this mini project of celebrating and honoring AAPI month. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Bye.